Well, hello, hello. It's been a long time no see, as I should say. It's been, 2 weeks? So hopefully everyone can hear me this evening. I am trying my new Nikon Z30 as my camera and all that good stuff. I double, triple checked everything for all that good stuff on audio. So fingers crossed, hopefully it works. Hey, Diana. We got Pamela. Who else we have on here? It says we got 5 people. So I got 2, Diana and Pamela. Who else? Come on. Everybody's so shy on here. It's the internet, right? No one really knows who you are. Oh. Well. Oh, Paul. There's Paul. I was hoping somebody'd be there else. Oh. So hopefully everybody has had a good 2 weeks. I've been busy, as always, between traveling and interviews and all that good stuff. So we'll give it a couple shakes here and I will hop onto the slides. But no, this one should be kind of interesting this evening. So we will see. I don't know if it's worth anything, but it's just my 2 cents, right? If that's worth anything, probably $1.50. It's just down here before the show started dinking around with photos from Colorado still. So some have been posting all week, and we got 6 on here now. So you know what? It's 8:01, so let's get started. So let me pop this up. Bam, there we are. So when I was coming up with show ideas, I'm always trying to think of something. And I come to conclude that it's like, what are things that always come up with people and photos? And why can't I do this? And why can't I do that? And it's always this or it's always that. And, I mean, it sounds kind of, hey, Jan, it sounds horrible to say habits that have sabotaging your photography. That's probably a little extreme. But these are just things that I see or have seen where it just kind of gets in the way. That's the way we should put it, is how these things get in the way of whether you're advancing. And I don't care if you're doing this to make money, to quit your job tomorrow or next week or next year or 5 years from now, or you do it for fun. I think any of these or all of these may at some point come in and get in the way. So, hey, we got 9 people on. So we got Jan, Paul, Diana, Pamela. Awesome. So I just wanted to kind of touch base on some of these things about things that I've seen, right? Why go through something if you don't have to? Because somebody else already has. So learn from them or learn from yourself. So like I said, these are just things that get in the way. I shouldn't say sabotage, but hey, right? It sounds exciting. So as always, I start out with a quote, So the biggest thing holding you back is almost always you. Start there. And I like this quote because if I come back to a photo over here that I'm editing and I don't like it, you've heard me say, well, I sit down and I try to think of it through a process and say, okay, what do I like about this? We'll leave it. What do I hate about this? No, get my list. Then I fix those one at a time. Can I go back to any of those things 99.9% of the time? I can always go back, look at a photo or a situation, and it's more likely me. I underexposed or I overexposed, or I was just too lazy in general, or whatever it may be. So you can always go back. I'm not going to say that everything, is not something else's fault. But I think when you start with yourself and you start looking at your process and things you do, guess what? It always comes back to you, because it always comes back to me when I think about it. It's always something that I've done or, and that's not a bad thing as long as you can identify that it was you and then why you did such thing, then you can correct it, whether good or bad. So, hey, Don, good to see you. I don't have lots of slides this evening. So this is probably the biggest one that I see. Now, this is kind of, I don't want to say pointed. I'm going to say you probably a lot tonight. And I should just say photographers, but I'll say you because that's just how it's going to be. But photographers in general, undervaluing your work. Well, what does that mean? I will tell you that I don't care if you're doing this, again, to make money on the side as a side hustle, to quit your job today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, or you do it for complete fun. And this is just your hobby. We all know whether the hobby starts out into a side gig and sometimes a side gig turns into a full-fledged job, right? Business. And even if get on my soapbox here, right? I can with my show, I guess. Is if you even if you're doing this as a side gig, you got to treat it like a business, and you got to follow the rules, the tax man, and all that stuff. There's that thing. But we undervalue our work. And the one thing with this is, I don't care. I see professionals do it just starting out. I've done it. I shouldn't say probably. We've all done it at some point. Or if you're the, weekend warrior doing it, don't undervalue your work. Because one, if you're doing this for money, you're going to be the cheap person, right? There's always somebody. I've been in sales for a little over 10 years. Now I'm leaving sales as of this kind of Friday. So yay to me. But in sales so long, there's always somebody cheaper than you. Always. I don't care who it is. And then that person, they found it was cheap. There's always somebody cheaper than them. And it goes on and on and on. It's like dominoes that get knocked over. They all just keep falling. You will always find somebody cheaper than you. And that, if you want to be the value proposition person and know that, because I will tell you, if you underprice your work, people think you're horrible because you're cheap, right? And then people will say, well, if I'm too expensive, then, yeah, you're great and all, but my work might not be good enough for that. Well, I'm not saying you have to charge $3,000 to start out for your first gig, but don't sell it for $300, because that does a couple things. One, it undervalues you as a photographer and your skill set, whether you have this much skills or this much skills. The other thing it does is it hurts the entire world around you. So let's say you don't give a crap about that, which everyone should, because what's going to happen is, let's say this takes off someday and you start doing more and more of this, you take it more seriously in a sense to make some cash. Well, you were that cheap person at one time, or super, super cheap, or that's somebody else. Those super, super dirt cheap people, I don't care, even in what I sell for a living, promotional products, they hurt the rest of the industry. Other cheapo photographers hurt the rest of the industry, because what happens is you get these value. We need value proposition photographers, whatever you sell, and we need obviously high-end stuff, because we all have different clients' needs, right? But if I charge basement rates, dirt cheap rates, it undervalues your friends in the business. It undervalues people you don't know, because they'll say, well, there's this group of core people over here who are super dirt cheap, and there's this really select few that are really pricey. That's okay, because guess what? These people on this side that are dirt cheap, they want to make $100,000 a year. They got to do 15 times the amount of work is this group, because they're charging more. They're valuing their work for what it is. And then when you undervalue your work, whether this is, even non-monetary value, that, oh, I'm not good enough for this, or, oh, I'm not good enough for that. I hear this all the time. And what happens, somebody calls them and says, I don't know what to price my work at. I really don't. I don't know what to price it at. And they'll say, I'm new to this, so I'm going to sell my 8x10 for $15. Okay, go, great. Then you start selling all these 8x10s for $15 to friends and family, and guess what happens? Now you're really getting into this more, and you raise your rates, and nobody wants to pay anything for it because you're the value proposition person. But don't even undervalue your work as you're a newbie. Oh, I suck at this. I'm no good. Everybody's good at something at some point in the photography realm. You may not be great at composition right away, but maybe you've got a knack for seeing a story or seeing something. And when you start to undervalue yourself, it gets up here, and then all you see is yourself as an undervalued, low-hanging fruit on the tree that's not very high up there, or you're the rotten crap on the ground. If you go to an apple orchard, you got pretty apples in the top because nobody can touch them. All the middle stuff's gone because everybody can get those. Nobody really touches the low-hanging stuff, and there's crap all over the ground. Don't be those low-hanging and crap, because when you say that, you start to value your work. You see all your work is crap. I've got people all the time that say, look at my photos. They're crap. No, they're not crap. They're actually really good. They're like, really? Because they've undervalued themselves way too long. So do not undervalue yourself. Oh, it's my mother. Hello, Mom. Hey, Kathy. So yes, do not undervalue yourself. We all do it. I do it. That's just the way we work. Gear. What do I mean by gear? I'm not talking about gear is, oh, woe is me, I couldn't take the picture of the eagle a quarter of a mile away in a tree because I don't have an 800 millimeter lens. No, I'm talking about how gear sabotages you because that's all you worry about. Plain and simple. You were worried about this dumb thing, right? This camera, you're worried about this lens, and then you're worried about the L bracket that goes in it and the batteries that are in it. and everything, and the accessories and the lenses and all that. That's what you're worried about. And what happens is that's where everybody focuses. So a little story. I have plenty of stories. Everyone knows that. But let's say several years ago when I was at PhotoPro, I had a guy out of the blue stop in. I would say they were two pro bodies. Couldn't get any better from Canon. There's about $12,000. Yeah, about $12,000. 400 2.8. Let's say there's another $12,000. A 300 2.8, which is probably another $5,000, give or take. And then a 24 to 70, there's about $2,000. A 70 to 200 2.8, there's another $2,500. That's a lot of money. And he was like, man, do you want to buy all this stuff? I'm done. I'm like, oh, you're done. What does that mean? Well, guess what he did? He bought all that expensive gear for 4 years of his kids' football games. And this is the thought he had. If he has $50,000+ in gear, he cannot take any horrible pictures because this thing will do it for him. Yeah, it will if I go into auto, right? If I go into auto, yes, it will do it. But guess what? It's not going to give you the photo you want. So people get stuck on this gear that, well, my photos aren't contrasty enough. They don't have enough contrast. So they talk to their photographer friend and they say, well, yeah, the Nikon XYZ isn't good. The files aren't as contrasty as the newest one. So guess what you do? You go drop $1,000 more and you buy a new camera. Now you're happy with these contrasty images, right? But you still don't like anything else. You don't like composition. The water is blurry. It's not sharp. Well, okay, it's this, it's that. So they talk to their friend again. Oh, well, you've got a 24 to 70 f4. That's not as sharp as the 24 to 70 2.8. So you drop another $2,500. Before you know it, you got all this gear. It's not the first time I've met somebody who's done this, and it will not be the last. And now you've got thousands and thousands of dollars in gear, and guess what? You're still not taking any better pictures. Why? Because you're focused on gear. You are not focused on how the gear works. You are not understanding how your camera works. You're not understanding how things relate to each other, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, all that stuff. That's the bread and butter right there, those 3 things. Well, let's just call it 4 things. If you can figure out shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and composition, I can give you this Nikon Z30, I can give you this Nikon Z2, I can give you a Canon R6, whatever it may be. And if you can figure out the basic way to input those settings into that device, that camera, you're going to get the photo you want. Simple as that. So if you focus on those 4 things, you can have great photos. I have seen people who have thousands and thousands of dollars in equipment and cannot take a picture to save their frickin' life because they're worried about gear. They're not worried about the technical side of it. The gear will do it for me. Yes, if you want a sharper image, it's a lens. Just because you shoot a lens at 8,000ths of a second doesn't make it super sharp. If the lens is built around as an economical lens, it may be not sharp. Outside of that stuff, gear isn't going to get you there. Then I have seen people. There's a girl, I will not mention her name, that I know pretty well, who does not have the world's greatest equipment. Very basic stuff, right? Has a 50 millimeter 1.8 lens, $200 lens, and about a $400 camera body, and she is blowing it the hell out of the water. Her stuff is super sharp. It's beautiful. It's composed well. Everything is great. But guess what? She's got, what, $500 maybe of equipment versus somebody who may have $10,000? Think if she had $10,000 in equipment with her skill set. Now what can she do? So, preach. Right? It should. But that's what it is. Gear isn't going to save you. It's knowledge that's going to save you. I always say it's the 12 inches behind the camera. That's what saves you. That's what knows how to light something. That's what knows how to compose something. Camera doesn't know how to do it. If you go into auto, the camera does everything for you based off of what is available. If it's dark in here and I do not have this light on, I guarantee you the camera will pick a crappy slow shutter speed and it'll be blurry. Every time. Now, if you have the knowledge to go over here and grab my tripod, throw a camera up onto the tripod, now it don't matter. So it's just, it's knowledge. It's not gear. It's none of that stuff. So I probably kind of covered the, the never learning your gear, but let's talk about it a little bit, any camera, I don't care what it is. This is my Nikon Z6 II. It's got more buttons than anything. And do I use all these buttons? Nope. Not at all. Do I need to? Nope. Someday, maybe. Do I use the function 1 and function 2? Hell no. I don't even know what they're pre-programmed out of the box to do. They would be real handy sometimes. I know what they can do. Things like that. But you just need to learn the basics. This is the mode dial, right? We need to know how to turn it and how it works and the on and off button and where to change ISO and shutter speed and aperture. That right there will get you going. So don't take all of this and think you need to learn about it all day inside out. If you learn the basics, eventually people say, how do you bring this up to your eye? And you're changing stuff and you're not even looking because it's muscle memory. I have trained myself by touch and feel on this camera where everything is. I don't have to do this and this and this. I can change shutter speed, aperture, ISO, all from here. So enough about the gear side and not learning it. But that's truly, you need to learn it, and even the technical side of things. Yeah, man. So, not taking one step at a time. I will tell you this is the biggest one besides gear that people get stuck with, especially when they start. Because when you go to look at a video or you talk to somebody, another photographer friend, especially somebody more advanced, what happens is they want to tell you, or you want to learn everything at once. You want to know how to plug everything into this, and you go click. It's not done there. Think of all the things as once the shutter goes click. Think of all the possibilities and things you can or do after that image is created. So people stress and worry about what lens and all this stuff, and they do all that stuff. Just go out and take photos. Compile your photos for a while. Because then they get into this, oh my God, now I have photos, and now what computer do I need to buy? I need to go buy a new computer. And then they get into buying computer, and why you need to just use the computer you have. Use it till you can't use it anymore. And then they're like, oh my God, my friend says I need this monitor over here. This monitor is a freaking Samsung. I went to Best Buy and bought it. I looked at like 3 monitors. I asked a couple IT friends, what would you recommend out of these? This one, that's the one I bought. This is like a half hour worth of research. I know people who research for days and days and days to find the perfect one to do the perfect color. And then, I don't know if I've got it. It's somewhere in here. So then they turn around and they go and get this monitor, and now they're worried about this. So I'm going to pull this out of my desk drawer. Now they gotta take this guy and hook it up and calibrate, and then they got to get somehow, how do I calibrate this thing to my printer? How do I get my screen to match the lab I print in? Right? Guess what? That's a lot of crap. A lot of crap to figure out. Color is the bane of everyone's existence. You get it eventually. But what I'm talking about here is we're not taking this one step at a time. We're not learning the basics of shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. And figure that out. We're not learning our camera. That's what we need to do first. Then we need to get into editing, right? Let's figure out Lightroom and Photoshop or whatever you choose to use, right? Then once we get our editing down, now let's worry about the monitor and the printers and who do you print through and where do you print through and all that stuff. Take it one step at a time, because when you focus on 18 things like I do, I from experience will tell you something always falls to the wayside. Something you never learn because it keeps pushing to the back burner, to the back burner, to the back burner, and it never comes back until either you remember it in 6 years or 6 months. So when you take one thing at a time, and I'm not saying master, you don't have to master one thing and on to the next. Have a solid understanding of the basics of each step of the process. I think if you took it slow and you're worried about your camera the first 3 months of the year, the next 3 months, you learn your editing, the next 3 months, you learn about monitors and colors. And then that last 3 months, you find something else. And guess what? In a year, you can come a long way. So take it one step at a time. Don't try to jump through 16 hoops at one time. It's never going to work. It's always going to fail. So remember, one step at a time. Oh, you're welcome, Rick. Always start with the basics. So listening only to one photographer. What does that mean? Well, that's like you guys coming on here every night or every Saturday, and you only listen to me. Awesome. That's great. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But there's other people besides Justin in the world, or somebody says, well, my friend, they're a professional photographer. Awesome. They told me And that's like the Bible. That's the Holy Grail, that one photographer they look up to. That's great. You should have that person. But go out into the world, there are other people. Because I have come to find that people, when I am teaching photography to them, whether it's in a large group, a small group workshop, or a one-on-one lesson, is somebody somewhere, it will always come up that, well, 5 years ago when I started, I was always told to do this. I don't understand that. I can't figure it out. I show them a different way. And they're like, well, that makes more sense, but I still don't understand. Then I might show them a different way. That's the way they find that works for them. Now, my brain didn't work that way, but theirs did, or yours might. So you got to go and look at other people. You need to go, whether it's a total amateur or a total pro, or somebody like, I don't know, Thomas Mangelson, Chuck Kimmerly, somebody who's way out there, who's doing a lot in the world. We can all learn from each other. If you're a group of 5 basic photographers who all bought their cameras yesterday, can all teach each other something. I will tell you that right now. They'll say, we all don't know anything. But guess what? Photographer A learned how to change ISO. Photographer B learned how to change shutter speed. But guess what? Photographer B didn't know how to change ISO, and photographer A didn't know how to change whatever, because I can't remember it now. Shutter speed. There we are. So guess what? They just taught something to each other. It doesn't need to be that you're teaching people how to do award-winning photos, right? You're going to find that expert in that field. You know, if somebody's really good at picking winner photos for the Iowa State Fair, yeah, consult them. But don't say that these 4 images you're going to enter into this contest are the only ones. Go to 3 or 4 or 5 other friends, family, coworkers, but also make sure some creatives are in there and say, okay, what do you think of these? And then don't just take that one person's word as, well, I don't like photo B, but they said so, so I'm going to do it. Horrible. Because I will tell you, I'm a gut instinct photographer. So I will, not in the photography world, let's put it that way. But a year ago, I quit my job and I went to a job. And I left after 30 days, less than 30 days. I didn't go with my gut. Something didn't feel right. I didn't learn, but I did it anyway. I was just chalking it up to nerves. It was horrible. I should have listened to my gut. Now I have a new job. I feel 100% comfortable with it. Fine. I'm not doubting anything about it. Why? Because I'm going with my gut. So it's things like that. So Mary says some people click better with others. Exactly. Doesn't mean one is better than the other. You just think alike. Exactly. You will find a group of people that think alike, but it's also great to hang out with that group who thinks complete opposite of you. Because that group can teach let's just say we have group A, it's very open-minded, and group B, it's very closed-minded. Group B is those authentic, we only shoot film, not dogging on those people that we're not going to ever, even with a digital camera, edit anything because it's not true to life, right? It's not, what do I want to say? I'm missing the term they always call it, but whatever. But this group is always willing to experiment and try things, right? Well, maybe they can show this group that's more, I'm only going to do it this way, something, and vice versa, right? Group A tends to be a little bit more so erratic that they don't really technically grasp something, so they don't know it as well. Things look a little crappy. Where group B is so focused and so wanting it to be the rawest form, and that's how it is, can teach this group to focus more. So it's things like that. Corey says, my favorite help was with a guy who I showed how to change the brightness on his back screen. And he was a pretty good photographer at the time. Just a little thing. Exactly. But that brings up a story, Corey. So I had a guy that came into PhotoPro. Pictures were beautiful on the back of the screen, properly exposed. We'd make a print. They were so freaking dark, we couldn't figure out what it was. He printed them at 3 labs, same way. Couldn't figure it out. Guess what? It was the screen brightness. He had it so bright because he was so underexposing his images that's how he thought it was just the camera screen. No, it was his technical skill set. And guess what? There's 4 people at PhotoPro. So myself at that time, in working at the store, let's just call it 5 years of experience, but a lot more than that in the photo world. And then I had TJ, who is probably 15, 20 years. So let's just call that 35. Mr. P, who's probably doing it 40. That's a lot of years of experience. None of us could figure it out. And then one day I stumbled and I'm like, what the hell is +8 on the back of your screen for? Went back to 0, boom. screen match the print. It's exactly how it works. So you can always teach somebody something. So don't listen to only me, and don't listen to only Fro Knows Photo on YouTube. Listen to me and Fro and somebody else, and come up to your conclusion of your way based off what I say, what Fro says, and what Photographer C says. And if you don't like A, B, or C, guess what? Do it your own way. So caring what others think of your work. This is another big one. The world of social media, in a sense. Oh, yes, miss the photo crew so much. Dang good PS. I miss it too because I can't get anything when I need it now. It's always at least a week. And it's always was good to chat and bullshit with TJ or give him some crap. So caring what others think. Social media is... the world of digital really did change everything on its head, flip everything on its head. It made things a lot more accessible. You could see things instantly. You know, that's great. There's a lot of pros, but there's just as many cons to the world of digital. Well, then social media came about. That's very great for business. Look, I can stream live to you now on YouTube because of social media. I'm like right now on Facebook and YouTube. That's awesome. But I could have some trolls tomorrow find my video and start trash talking me, right? I don't give two shits, really. I don't care. Let them troll away. I might even have some fun with it. But people will always worry about those damn thumbs up emojis, the huggy carry emojis, the love emojis, the likes. Do I like to get 56 likes on a photo I post? Yes, who doesn't? It's dopamine, right? That shot of dopamine. But guess what? I will tell you, I have seen some photos that have won really good high-end contests online and get posted, and they have very little engagement. And then I will see the oversaturated, over-processed crapola that the general public, per se, non-creatives, non-photographers, and it's got 83,000 hearts. Who cares? Doesn't make it a good photo. So caring what other people think. Now, if you got the troll on the internet or somebody I love it when I do a show that I like to eavesdrop and listen to people talk about my work. I did one at a show one time, and they're like, this group of people is trying to be like, oh, he was trying to feel this. No, it was a damn frickin' barn in a field. There was no, it was a photo. That's what it was. I documented a scene. That's what it was. It wasn't this whole, my inner depths of struggle and all that bullshitty artist stuff, you know, really, no offense. It's like, I hate artist statements. I did art shows for a while. They want your art statement. I wanted to say, I'm a guy who takes photos in the Midwest who burns way too much gas and puts way too many miles on his vehicle. No, they want that I draw my inspiration from the wavy, wooey grass out in the scene. I mean, that's me. I'm a straightforward kind of guy. I don't need all that fluffing up. It is what it is how as I say. So don't care what somebody says. Was I upset that they didn't like the photo because it didn't give them a feeling? No. Did I like it? That's all that matters. I liked it. Did the next group love it? Yes, because it may have reminded them of something. So it's things like that. It's getting tied up into all this stuff of what people think of your work and what, you know, it's like, I hate it when people will post a photo to Facebook. And they will say, hey, I took this picture last Saturday. Cool. And somebody's got to get on there and say, you got a dust spot, or you got this, or you should have done this. Did they ask for that? No. Then keep it to yourself. Just because it gets posted on a Facebook photo page doesn't mean somebody obviously wants it critiqued. Now, if they post and say, hey, I took this photo last weekend, anything I can do better, then go for it. In a constructive way. So that's the other thing I hate about social media and this whole caring about what people think. So you know what? It's kind of just forget about it. It's two shits don't care. If they don't like your work, who cares? Maybe they don't have good taste. I don't know. It's just not their thing. It's your thing. And so I think it's like a whole night of just preaching, right? Imposter syndrome. Well, what does that mean? Well, when you get down on yourself for the number one, right? We don't value our work. We care what other people think. When we're undervaluing our work, that puts us in that mindset, right? That we're not good. We're the low-hanging rotten fruit on the tree or the worm-holed apples. That's where we get mentally. Then we become imposter syndrome. Like, people will say, I don't do this full time. Am I a professional photographer? I hear that all the time. Then they start to have the imposter syndrome, like they're a fake, that they're not that true, real photographer. They just bought a camera and they have some money and they kind of take good photos. So you get that imposter syndrome to, second guess yourself if you are what you think you are. Who cares what other people think? If, the way I look at, so when people will say, well, how do I know am I a professional photographer? I don't know. There's a million ways we could look at it. If you're paying taxes, guess what? You might as well be a professional photographer, right? If people are buying your work, call yourself a professional. You can call yourself a professional if you're not doing anything. I don't care. It's just a title. I know people, I don't even like to be called a photographer. I like to be called an artist or a creative or something else. Like, look at all these people now that don't use photographer on a business card or their website. They're like an artistic image maker or shutter clicker, right? Just if you want to call yourself a shutter clicker, that's great. That does not devalue your knowledge, your work. It doesn't undervalue anything you do. It's just a title, right? I know people that are called like the stupid vice president of HR and they suck at their job or whatever, right? Just because they have that fancy title doesn't mean they're good at it. The paper on the wall says, yeah, I've got all the details, I can do it. It's where I struggle with like Professional Photographers of America. I love the group, PPA, all the things they bring with it. But everybody's like, do I need to go become a certified professional photographer? I say no. Now, I say no because you don't need the certification of professional photographer to do what we do and do it well. The skill sets you will learn from that program to become certified, to prove to a group of people that you can do that, that's the moneymaker. That's the kicker. That's what you want. I don't care. I see it on a group I'm on a lot for PPA of their image thing. People are all worried about getting merits and all that shit. That's fine, because guess what? That gives them their degree. I don't care about the merits. I really don't. But if you want to get a degree, you've got to do this to get merits. But here's the kicker. It's not the merits that are getting you the degree. It's the stuff that goes into learning to get the merit, so the merit can apply to the degree program to get your CPP, your certified professional photographer. That's where it all comes from. It's everything you got to do to get to something, right? So when I went to culinary school, does that freaking paper, I don't even know where the paper is saying I have a degree in it. It's in a box out there somewhere. It doesn't hang on my wall. I don't care. It's an expensive piece of paper. But there are skills that I learned to get that paper that made me better when I worked in the kitchen. So that's the way I look at it, is everything, it's all the knowledge and the things to get you to that point. So I don't care. You can have, I know people who have, I hate it when employers or somebody will look at a paper versus real world experience. Because I always tell people in photography or whatever you do, there's two things. There's theory and reality. Theory is what I went to school to learn. That if you do X, like let's say in photography, that we do A and we do B in Photoshop, we will get C. But if you have done that, 90, let's just call a couple percent of the time, you do A and you do B and C does not happen. That is reality. That is not theory. Theory says every time I pull out one of these books and read it, it tells me that something happens, right? And then I go to the real world and do it. And it doesn't happen. I've been on photo shoots where I go to do something and I know, oh, I need to set this way, this way, and the light this way, and I click the shutter. Guess what? It didn't fire my light. My studio light didn't go off. But if I read the manual, they said all you have to do is put the transmitter on your camera. Take that transmitter, set it to group A, make sure the light's on group A, make sure the radio channel on your radio trigger is 1 and 1, so they match. It should fire every time. But they don't say, or what you don't realize is there's varying things in the air, radio signals, all these things that can mess with that radio signal. That is reality. So you need to know how to fix it. So all that stuff will just eventually lead up to, if you think an A works and A plus B equals C and it's not working, and then you're like, I don't know what I'm doing and things, and then you start second guessing yourself and undervaluing things. And then guess what? All this stuff goes into a bag, never to come out again. So don't get into that imposter syndrome. Oh, Mary says, I want some of the food you learned to make in culinary school. I don't know about that. There's some interesting things, Mary. I like French cuisine. There's a lot of weird stuff there. So don't get stuck in imposter syndrome. Only showing your work to family and coworkers. So I will tell you, I love my mother, right? My mom will always tell me that all my photos are wonderful. All my friends will tell me my photos are wonderful. So then I think I'm a wonderful photographer, right? Not that that's bad. It's good. Your photos probably are good, but they're not a photographer. They don't see things from a technical side. Let's say you have a friend that's a painter. They're creative. They understand composition. They still understand light. They still understand shadow and form. Maybe they look at your photo and they're like, it is really good, but there's some critiquing available, right? So if you show another photographer friend, or maybe somebody who's more artistically inclined than somebody who is not, you're going to get better, more genuine feedback on your work than if you show it to family and friends, I think, because they will always tell you, friends don't want to hurt your feelings, family don't want to hurt your feelings, so they're not going to tell you that they don't like your photo. Now, they could. Everybody can do things in a nice way. Just don't say, well, that's a pile of shit right there, and it doesn't look any good. No. If I don't like a photo, somebody else come up in a couple of years ago when I was at the store, somebody goes, this photo or this photo for the state fair? I was like, that one's really good. That one's even better. And I didn't like the better-ish one for a few reasons, but it was different. That's what gets people into the state fair, something different. Not a flower, all in focus, maybe a balloon, I don't know, something creative, right? I don't remember what the photos were. I didn't like it, but it was much more technically strong. Now, they're like, well, I put it on Facebook for my friends to vote, and both are about dead even, because it's just what people like. And sometimes what people like is not what your current world reality is in like the contest world. That's why I hate about contest is there's always that maybe a fad or a theme or something that the whole world's seeing everything in black and white, and that's what everybody wants to see, and that's what they're throwing out of color or whatever, that kind of stuff. So just remember that it's still going to get feedback, especially from non-photo people. Let's say you're going to show somebody a wedding portfolio. That might be great to show family or friends because they are thinking more along the lines of that consumer versus the photographer, right? The photographer is going to tell you to go out and buy $18,000 more gear, where your family and friends are not going to tell you that because they don't know you need a light for fill flash, but the photographer does. That's great. But they're like, I like it just the way it is. It's more natural, whatever. Guess what? If that's what you're looking for, that you've decided that you want to be an all-natural light photographer, no strobes, no nothing, just natural light, and that's what you're hearing from your friends and family and everybody else, and saying, yes, and you're hearing everything you want to hear, then great, that's your end consumer. But just with this point, try to show a variety of people your work, things like that. I mean, my Facebook page is weird. I have lots of non-photographer people who follow me and lots of photographers who follow me. So it's always kind of fun I'll click the likes and see sometimes who's really liking it. And, so if I get a bunch of photographers liking it, I guess there's something technically great, right? Or whatever. Or, but if I have a lot of family and friends who like it, but not the photographers, do I take that to heart that it's a bad photo? No, not at all. It's just fun to see that. You stop learning. So we're getting a little closer here to the end, but you stop learning. You choose not to learn. You think you know it all. I will tell people all the time, I do not want to hang out with other people who do not choose to learn photography, or the people who think there's only one way to do it. I've been at a workshop. I've taught a workshop at Photo Pro one time where we had one gentleman who was going around telling everybody that's not how you do it. This is the only way you do it. I know a person says you only should shoot on manual, and film's the only way to go. Shoot film on manual. Maybe for Jack over here, but not for Susie. That's not Susie's gig, right? So because those people that, like when I was talking about that group A, it's more open, and B group is more closed-minded. Those are usually the stop learning people. They have decided ages ago that they are the best. They don't care who says they are. Somebody will say, well, Jackie says you're a horrible photographer. No, I'm the best of the best of the best. Why? Because they stopped learning. They think they don't need to learn anymore. But the more you learn, the better. Right? I mean, I'm always learning. I learn stuff from people on Facebook. I learn from a video that pops up, right? I mean, I don't know everything and I don't care to know all of it, right? It would be no fun. If I wasn't challenged when I picked up either of these cameras when I go out, what's the fun of it? Really, literally, right? To me, what I like about photography is the creativeness, the learning, the challenges that I get, because that challenge makes me learn something and I can take what I've screwed up and teach you or somebody else, all that stuff. That's what I like about it. I always want to learn. If I had nothing else to do and I had all the money in the world, I would be in workshops, every online class I could find out. If I didn't have to work another day in my life, you'd never find me around. I'd always be learning. I love it. You know, there's things I don't care to love to learn, like in the business world, like marketing and things. And there's things I have to learn, and then there's things I want to learn. So just don't stop learning. Corey says, if you don't think you have learned, go back a few years in your gallery and compare then to now. Yes, that's why I don't take any photo off my Facebook page. I don't. If you go back to my very, very beginning stuff, it's actually really shitty, I think. But what's really funny too is, I should post this. I probably will in a post eventually. But I was at my mom's after we got back from Colorado, and she's like, here, go through all this crap and throw it away, because I'm not going to. I'll let you throw it away if you don't want it. And I found the very first freaking photo I ever took, ever. It's well, let's put it this way. The very first photo that I truly remember taking, kind of getting into the world. It was a crooked fence post with barbed wire wrapped around it. It's on literally a 4x6 piece of paper from the darkroom. It's real, not even square. It's all cut shitty like. And it's got dust spots all over it and all that stuff. And I thought that was awesome. Like, I did that. I clicked the shutter and I developed the film and I put it on a print, and that was awesome. And it is. So it's one of those things I should just frame it when I get a frame down here or something, because guess what? I can go back to look at days that I feel the imposter syndrome or I undervalue myself. I can look at that and say, look at the shit that hangs on your wall there. Look at the calendar you've done, and look at that. Look how far you've come. So yes, that is an awesome point, Corey, because when you do that, you can compare your stuff, and then you're like, oh, maybe I'm not as bad as I thought I was. So it's always a good thing. Yeah, man. There we are. Number 12. This is the last one, I believe, right, on my list. Yes. Well, no. Well, 13 or something. It don't matter. Is setting unrealistic expectations. And what I mean by that is you set these expectations that are ridiculous, that they make no sense. You might think you can do it. So when I was losing weight, I had a coach for a short time, and he said, what if you think it's going to take you 6 months, double it. That's how long it's going to take you. And I will hear people say, I'm going to know everything I want to know in 6 months. I'm going to pick up the camera. I'm just going to start knocking it out of the park, blah, blah, blah. And they get all this, and I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to do that, all within this amount of time. And usually it's very unrealistic. Maybe if you didn't work a day and you could devote 8 hours a day, like a job, to this, then sure, you could. You know, like let's say you go to a workshop and you're like, at the end of the workshop, I want to have a better understanding of lighting. You're going to a lighting workshop. What I hear people say is, well, I'm going to go to this one seminar by one photographer for 8 hours, and I'm going to master everything I need to know about this skill by the end of the day. That's unrealistic. That's not going to happen. You might master it in the sense of the book, right? You know, not reality. You know, reality is you're going to have to actually do it, because I've completely looked at stuff. I will read something in Photoshop or let's say Photoshop, because that's harder to understand. I've watched a video. That's easy. I don't know if Connie is on here tonight, but Connie Wiedemeyer, you know, she taught me something. I called her up one day and said, man, I remember her and I had a conversation about putting photos together, composites kind of in Lightroom, and then masking and painting away one part to make another part show. She's like, I do that a lot. I understood word for word what that paper on the interweb told me to do. I did it about 25 times before I called Connie. And guess what? I couldn't get it to work. Connie stepped me through it. We still couldn't get it to work. She's like, I don't know why. Guess what? It finally worked. I don't know. That's just how the world turns. But you're not going to master that in one day just because you read the book. You may understand the book, but you don't understand the actual reality of actually physically doing the task at hand. So don't set these unrealistic expectations. Just say, hey, I'm going to take 5 good portfolio images by the end of the year. Or let's say 4, 1 for each quarter. Don't say that I'm going to take 50 portfolio images in the first month of the year. Not going to happen. So just think things on a more realistic basis. Don't set these unrealistic expectations. And this one, I don't know what I was typing here, and I saw it and I just let it be. That's me. Not having a plan. You go into photography of learning, I don't know, let's say your camera. You don't have a plan. You don't know how you're going to do it. You don't have a plan of, I'm going to go out on this photo shoot and I'm going to do these 5 photos on the whim. Again, no plan. They don't go real well. Not going to say now everything never goes to plan. That's just how that works. Murphy's Law every time. But having an idea of how you're going to accomplish something with setting expectations or coming up with the plan and say, you know what, the first quarter, I'm really going to understand exposure, the first 3 months. And then the next, quarter, the following 3 months, I want to learn more editing. And then I want to learn about printing and color, right? Those are expectations that are realistic and you have a plan. Now, you don't have to have this detailed, drawn out plan, this giant whiteboard with lines going to here and you're going to do this and you're going to read this specific book and do this and that and that and that and whatever. It's like if you go back a step to the unrealistic expectations, people will say, well, I'm going to, do this, whatever goal it is. My plan is to have this. Well, you can tie these unrealistic expectations together with not having a plan or even with having a plan. So just make sure everything seems doable and then be flexible. If you come up and find out that this plan is not working because it was not enough time, then stretch it out, tweak it a little bit. So it's things like that. And the last one, you're not being you. Simple as that. You love, let's put it this way, our Iowa magazine. I worked a long time of lots of emails and trying to get on as a freelancer for them, and it finally worked. And it was lots of follow-up things and like, did you get this? Did you get that? And the guy's like, we love your work, but, okay, here's the but. I was waiting for the no. But he goes, well, you don't really take pictures of pretty Iowa. They're like, what the hell do you mean by that? He goes, I would hang the picture of the John Deere tractor you have in the barn with the side lighting covered in bird poop in my house. I love that. But we would never publish that because it's not pretty enough for the end user. Okay, valid point. But he didn't say I was a bad photographer. Am I going to go and change my entire mantra as a photographer, everything I focused on, the things that bring me enjoyment, the things I care to photograph, because that one editor or 2 editors said that's not what they're looking for? No. Now, yes, I do take photos for them. I submit them 4 times a year for consideration for the magazine, but guess what? I know what they're looking for. When I go out, if the thing presents itself, I will photograph it. Can I go out on a couple days and look to shoot maybe just photos for the fall like that? Yes. But I have in mind when I go out and photograph things. So it's things like that. So be you, nothing else. So my camera battery is about to go dead. So let's keep this a little quicker here. Reminder. His Iowa. Corey. Next week, 3rd weekend is Coffee and Clicks. It's going to be over at Scooters on Edgewood. Same time, same time, 9 to 11, but we're going to have our own room now. That's awesome. So stay tuned because we are going to have next week creating a photographic workflow. Then we're going into, why can I never remember that one? Looking at subjects in a new light. Then we will look at creating a post process workflow, and then elements of a photograph. Now, when it comes to end of the month, into July, those dates are probably going to change. So with my new job, I'm going to second shift weekends. So my only days off are going to be Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to move the lives. I took a poll today on Facebook, and everybody said they would prefer Tuesday nights at 8. Hopefully you can be there. I know we've been doing this for a whole year, but there's two things that was going to happen. Either I quit doing it altogether, or I switched to Tuesday or Wednesday nights. And I didn't want to quit altogether because there's 12 and 13 of you that show up on a regular basis and you want to learn, right? I'm not going to stop that. So Tuesday nights. Oh, you are welcome, Don and Mary and Corey, as always. So before the camera goes dead, thank you guys very much. I always enjoy doing it for you. And thank you for joining in all the time. So as I start my new endeavors, things will change. I'm going to have more open time in the mornings for lessons and things like that versus the evenings, which will be super nice because I don't start my new job till 3 in the afternoon. That will be nice. So more of that will come out as we get there, but I will see you all next week. You know where to find me. If you have comments, questions, or concerns, let me know. So before the camera goes dead, have a good evening. It's awesome to be back after a 2-week hiatus, and hopefully I was more uplifting than downlifting, right? Downlifting, that's not a thing, right? But putting you in the basement. So awesome. Well, you guys all have a good night, and I will